Makes
Morning,
sense.
everybody. Let's go ahead and get started here momentarily with this morning's meeting. How's everybody doing? Good. I'm seeing some waves.
Good.
Good. So this morning's we have a special guest to do our welcome message, and without further ado, Councilmember Mello, would you be interested in welcoming us today, if I could speak?
Good morning, Rob.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. I'd love to. Thanks for inviting me. I'm very interested in listening to the discussion this morning. Happy Friday to everybody. It's beautiful. I just want to continue my gratitude to this really hardworking, smart group. Thank you for doing the real work on the ground, helping folks like me think through what the real strategies are, what the real investments are, and the hard work that's in front of us. So you really have my deepest gratitude. I got to go to the Hype Center yesterday. You probably are all very familiar, but the Hype Center is something that we funded in our American Rescue Plan Act first round of investments. It's a comprehensive life resources facility on Pearl Street that it's a day center that takes a lot of the youth from the Beacon Center during the day to do day services, skill building, activities, mental health, healthcare, other connections. And I got to spend about an hour there meeting some of the staff and meeting some of the clients. And they just opened recently. Like I said, it's in large part because of an investment that the county got to make in the program. And it was just really wonderful to see some really high quality evidence-based programming that's taking place that is really helping get, especially in this case, youth and young adults to build the skills to get out of the cycle of poverty. And that was just incredibly inspiring. It was definitely the best part of my week. Hearing from the staff and just sitting there and listening and asking them very open-ended questions. If you were me, what would you invest in? If you were me, what would you do differently? And just really great, practical, thoughtful responses. And you could see the youth there were really getting a lot of value out of their time. So I highly value the work that you all do and organizations like CLR and my opportunity to meet with the Hype Center. Pride Month, the LGBTQ Pride Month is coming to a close at the end of this month. July is Pride Month in Tacoma and for the first time officially Pierce County this year. And thanks all of you for your expressions of support for that effort. If you got to follow, it was a bit more dramatic than I was expecting it to be to officially declare July LGBTQ Pride Month in all of Pierce County. And it really being in the thick of this kind of policy making work and hearing all kinds of rancor all the time. I guess I'll be honest and I'll say that I wasn't quite prepared for the immense pushback from some in our community and unfortunately some of my colleagues. Maybe I should have been more prepared, but I'll be honest with you and say I wasn't. It was quite hurtful, especially as an out gay man. But more importantly, the kids the young people who listen to those messages, they're incredibly hurtful. And really contributes to, we all know this, really contributes to kids' self-confidence, self-worth. And we wonder why we have such a disproportionate amount of our young people who are experiencing homelessness. Since then, have been having some, really difficult one-on-one conversations with my colleagues about why it matters. A proclamation didn't change the county code, right? It didn't invest millions of dollars more in LGBT youth serving organizations, or it was a declaration of who we are as people, right? And by all accounts, the staff here and some of the veteran members here said it got the most amount of constituent contact ever. And I was like, I was in the middle of the health department debacle a year ago. You're telling me this got more constituent contact, and on both sides, a lot of negative, a lot of negative comments, and again, just reflecting on that and how, while it didn't change the county code, while it did not make an appropriation of financial resources, it is so important what we say, what we stand for every day, right? And really just underlined for me how important how our government and our nonprofit sector and our private sector, what we say, what we stand up for, absolutely matters to people's self-worth and identity and ability to lead, dignified, productive lives. So I know all of you are head down in the work. The disproportionality of the work, especially this month. I think a lot about the disproportionate amount of young people, especially young people who are LGBTQ, who experience homelessness, and use Pride Month as not only an opportunity to, come out of the shadows. Pride Month is the time to no longer be shameful, no longer to be in the closet, no longer to be shoved in the closet, but to be proud of who we are and help people celebrate who they are. But it's also a time to educate others so that they know how important it is to still do the work. So definitely want to continue to use this month every year to do that work. And I thank you for all of that. The last thing I'll mention, it is here at Pierce County, in our county charter, at least once a year, every district is required to host an in-district meeting. This will be my first one, as I am new to this legislative body. We're going to be doing ours on September 8th, and we're going to be doing a hyper focus on homelessness and housing, but more of an emphasis on homelessness. I'll make sure to get a more formal written invitation to you through Rob, but it'll be the evening of September 8th. We'll be at University Place Council Chambers. We're there on purpose. I'm kind of criticized as too much of a Tacoma guy. And we know that people experience homelessness from every single zip code, and I really want to help promote that message. So we're taking the show to University Place. We're going to really focus on homelessness. The plan is for Garrett Nyland to present on the shelter plan and the Coalition to End Homelessness plan there, and some other interesting work going on. There's some interesting work going on. We just put a contract in place to study gaps in the homelessness, is separate from the Coalition to End Homelessness and the shelter work plan study, separate but connected. The county council just, the performance audit committee of the county council just appropriated funds and are moving forward on a contract with Econ Northwest to do a gap analysis. We can send that in the homelessness system and the true cost of homelessness. There's a lot to this body of work. Maureen and I think Sally have been paying attention to it quite carefully. If anybody wants the scope of work, I'm happy to give it to folks through Rob or whatever makes sense. But we again, September 8th, in-district meeting, laser focus on homelessness to help bring a spotlight to the work and hopefully, begin the kickoff of what needs to be some major serious investments in what the smart folks are telling us we need to invest in. So again, thanks for letting me be here this morning. I'm going to listen in to the rest of the meeting, and my deepest gratitude for the work you do every day.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Mello. And one quick question for you. Is that September 8th meeting anticipated to be an in-person meeting then?
It is, yeah. It'll be hybrid, but definitely in person.
Great, thank you. We'll put that on our calendars and look forward to hearing what can be presented there. So thank you very much. And thank you everyone for being here this morning. I know we haven't done this for the last couple of weeks and it's not really in the agenda, but I thought we would ask if we have anybody who's new with us this morning who would like to either drop your information in the chat to introduce yourself or just take a second to say good morning and introduce yourself. So if you just want to use the raise your hand function, then I can call on folks who might be new and might want to be acknowledged, or again, you can use the chat. So Joe, I see your hand up.
Good morning, everybody. Excuse me. My name is Joe Colombo, and I am a candidate running for District 2, Position 2 for the city of Puyallup. And one of the issues that is facing our city is homelessness. So I was informed about this meeting and wanted to join today.
Thank you, Joe, and thank you for joining us. Gina.
Hi, everybody. I'm more of a welcome back than a welcome, but I'm Gina Cavadu. I'm on the Key Peninsula branch of Children's Home Society of Washington. So we serve the other side of the bridge, primarily focusing again on Key Peninsula, but also Gig Harbor and parts of Mason County. So I'm excited to be here as that capacity, but also as one of the co-chairs of the Gig Harbor Key Peninsula Homeless and Housing Coalition we started, just because there's some unique needs on our side of the bridge, and I'm happy to see new faces and happy to see familiar faces. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Gina. And I see Sidonia with a good morning in the chat. Anybody else? Sidonia, your hand's up.
Good morning. I'm Sidonia Young, and I'm representing the Tacoma Ministerial Alliance. I'm very interested in what you all are doing because the services that you provide are really needed in our community. And I work with the different churches throughout Tacoma and Pierce County, helping them provide services for our residents. So thank you very much. I'm very interested in finding out more and how we can be a part of this organization if possible.
Thank you, Sidonia, and definitely you're welcome here, and we're glad you're here this morning. So hopefully this morning's meeting and content is useful for you. All right, so why don't we move on to our first standing item that we do every week, which is our This Week on the Streets section of the meeting. And what this is an opportunity for folks who are doing direct outreach and community members who are saying things in their own community to let the group know what needs are out there, what has changed on the streets. We'd love to hear whatever folks have to share if you're doing direct interaction with those who are currently homeless. So again, raise your hand or unmute yourself and share with the community. And awkward silence is part of these meetings, so just so you know.
Rob, I'm not sure how to jump in.
Well, you just did, so that's perfect.
I'm Richard. I live on North Ainsworth, and two things I've been watching. We have a woman named Tina living in a tent at the across from the Jason Lee Middle School track on the SDA church property, and I've been giving her food and water, talking with her. She's interested in receiving services. I've made some calls and outreach, and I don't know if anybody's been able to connect with her, but it's been a couple weeks now that she's been living there. Fairly disoriented woman, pretty isolated, afraid to leave her tent, but just wanting to make note of that. I've been out of town for a day. The other issue I've been keeping an eye on, and this group may be aware of what's going on, is cleanup at the 11th and MLK property now that the tents have been they've been gone for a week. And last I've seen, the garbage continues to pile or at least remain there. And I don't know if anybody in this group has the wherewithal or resources to have an impact on making a difference on what's going on there. But those are the two things that kind of top of my mind this week on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Always good to hear from a neighbor on these. So anyone else with this week on the streets items? Teresa?
Just a quick, as you all know, every time a site gets closed down, the other encampments throughout the city get an increase of folks. So that certainly happened on our street, and I'm guessing it's happened on the other streets when the place up near MLK was shut down. Is there somebody here who can talk about that shutdown and why it happened?
I don't know if we have anyone from the city who could address that. I believe the 11th and MLK site, is that the same site where there was a fire a week or so ago? Yeah. Yeah, because it was my understanding that the removal of folks from that site happened right after the fire. I don't have direct knowledge.
So a good question for us to find the answer to is whether or not the porta potty and hand washing station got moved someplace else useful. What happened with that? And it would be great to have some, when they're moving people, some plan for where they go. Once again.
Yep. Thank you, Teresa.
Hi, Rob. This is Monique.
Yeah, Monique.
I'm on my phone for the first time. I have no clue what I'm doing. But I went to the site, and yes, they were kicked out because of the fire that was started. And the porta potty and hand washing station were not there when I was there.
Thank you, Monique. So we have a couple more moments if folks have anything additional to share. And Teresa, maybe we can double back with the city during the government updates to see if they can offer any insight. All right, so Maureen, you're muted right now, Maureen.
Thank you. I don't see Jeffrey Boyce. I think he's the one who told me that the 72nd and McKinley, I think, encampment has built up again. And I don't know if that's on anybody's radar.
Yeah, and Jeffrey's actually off this week. I believe he's back next week. So maybe he can offer an update at that time if no one on the call is familiar with that site. All right, so if anybody else has additional information or concerns that they'd like to drop into the chat, that would be a great way to get it to us. As a reminder, throughout these meetings, I did post in the chat a little bit ago the meeting norms for the coalition meetings. You know, I will repost those as we move into the next session. But we do retain the chat and use that as a resource on an ongoing basis. So please use that as a way to communicate with the coalition leadership so that we can make sure that these issues are addressed over the coming week. So let's move in. Yes.
I'm so sorry. I do not know how to raise my hand on the phone. I have no clue what I'm doing. Don't know how to use the chat.
It's all good.
And I think you're on this week on the streets. Is that where you are right now?
We are just wrapping that part up. So yeah, if you have something to add, this would be perfect.
Yeah, just real quick. At 24th and 25th near Pacific, that has grown a great deal. I don't see an additional porta potty. There should be one porta potty per 50 people. And I didn't see that they added an additional one. So I don't know who I can speak to about that, or if that's something you can deal with, but just so that's out there.
We'll take that information in. And I do know that Clarissa from the city is on the call. So she has heard that now as well. So appreciate you reporting that, Monique.
Oh, my apologies, Monique. I was emailing Linda now about the fire. What was the question you had?
I was out at 24th and 25th Streets off of Pacific, and it has grown. There's about 125 people out there now, and there's just one porta potty, and I know that it should be one porta potty per 50 people. So just wondering how we can get another porta potty out there. That was the question.
I was on mute. Thank you. Thank you, Monique.
You're welcome.
I'm emailing my supervisor now to get questions by the update later on.
Thank you, Clarissa, and thank you, Monique, for that report. So let's move on in our agenda. The first presentation that we have, and we're doing some short presentations to kick off these meetings as well. And I would like to invite Dawn Bowl from Catholic Community Services. Dawn is going to give us a little update on the Puyallup Hotel Pilot Project. So Dawn, the floor is yours.
Hey everyone, good morning. It's been probably well over a year since I've been on the coalition meeting, but happy to be back. Thanks for the invite. And hi, Janet, miss you. So let's see. So yes, I'm Dawn Bowl. Thanks for the invite. I am with Catholic Community Services. I'm the program supervisor for supportive services case management team. And that consists of our stability site, or the stability site. We have case management there on site. That includes our Nativity House shelter and Nativity House apartments. And then also the new pilot project in Puyallup for the Puyallup Hotel. So we started that, I guess that inception was February 11th is when that began. We got some people, that's right when the snow hit. So we were able to try and fast track that as we were getting all the things signed and contracts signed. We were able to fast track that and get some folks into the hotel that weekend. And so it's been at capacity since February 15th with a wait list. And the capacity is that we have 20 rooms that the city is paying for. And then within those rooms, they're usually single adults, some of them are couples. So we actually have 27 people in the program right now. And so in total, we have served 48 people since February 11th till now. Some being exited due to non-compliance within our program, some being exited due to non-compliance within the hotel themselves. They have their own rules and regulations that they need to follow as well. So we offer on-site case management there. Just like any other case management, we're there to help them file for Social Security, apply for jobs, look for apartments, get them into coordinated entry, assist them with driver's license, whatever goes along with your typical case management. And then connect them, of course, to any mental health. We've been partnering with Greater Lakes as well, along with our ABH team, and trying to connect with mental health services, any substance use disorder, and help them get into treatment. We've had some really good successes with people with job employment. We've had some people gain employment. One person was able to buy a car and increase their hours due to the stimulus check. They were able to go out and buy a car, and their hours of work at Puyallup increased a lot, which was great. We've had other successes of just people, of course, just engaging, right? You're coming off the streets, have no contact, and getting them a place to settle down and lay their head at night. So I think the first week, I thought it was really cool because we had one girl who hadn't had a job in quite some time. The moment she was able to come to the hotel and just have a place to lay her head at night and be safe, she had a job within the first week. And so that was really cool. But that's it. Oh, and then, like I said, so we are at capacity. We've been at capacity since the start of this with 20 rooms. There is a wait list, and that wait list is managed by Puyallup Police Department, Officer Pearson, and also City of Puyallup with Melissa Moss. they are the two that would manage the wait list and keep track of who can come in and whatnot. So if there is anybody that you're trying to get into the hotel, definitely reach out to them, because I don't have any control over who gets in and who doesn't.
So thank you, Don. Do you have a moment for questions from folks?
Yeah, absolutely. And also, I just want to apologize. There is a mark on my screen, so do not try to adjust your screens. My camera broke, and so I know that there's a big black spot right in the middle of my screen. So it's not you guys, it is me. So don't try to adjust your own screen. But yeah,
So Don, so Don, one question that I have, and then I'll get to Maureen. Is there a projection for how long the hotel project will run, and a commitment from the city?
Yeah, so we just got word last week, so we're extended until March of 2022, I guess. So 8 more months. So it was a 6-month pilot project. It's been successful enough that they've asked to keep it going.
Thank you. Maureen?
Had to find the unmute button. Thank you. Don, can you talk a little bit about how it works to have the referrals only coming through Melissa Moss with the City of Puyallup and the Puyallup Police Department?
In what way can you expand on that, Maureen?
Well, I mean, that's one very specific model.
Mm-hmm.
And as we're looking at trying to get everybody off the streets by the 1st of November,
Sure.
Sort of, what are the strengths or concerns or,
Yeah, so, this is, I don't want to speak on behalf of the City of Puyallup, but this is basically, this is their, this is the model that they wanted to have due to the outreach that they're doing in Puyallup. So they really wanted to focus on it being within the city limits of Puyallup. Officer Pearson, he's with the outreach team on the police department. So he's out there going to the encampments, and that's where they're kind of getting the referrals off of from there.
Thanks.
Yeah, sorry, I don't have any. That would definitely be a question for City of Puyallup.
No, don't expect you to speak for this city at all. More as just the program
Sure.
operator. It sounds like it's working.
Yeah, I mean, it is going well. Certainly, would love to have a larger expansion of things, but I guess this is right now. That's where it's at, is just that focused area.
Thanks.
Well, one more question for you, Don. How long is your waiting list?
I tried to ask that of Officer Pearson yesterday, and he didn't get back to me, and he is off today, so I don't have that answer for you. I have that on there. It is at least 10 deep, I believe. At least, but yeah.
Great. So anyone else with a question for Don before we move on to the next item? Well, thank you very much for joining us, and great to have you back, and keep up the good work.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
All right. So our next item on the agenda is we have invited Heather Moss from Pierce County Human Services to join us. And I think I saw Heather in the room. So if you're ready and willing to start walking us through, talk about the recent heat emergency and just planning at the county level for people who are currently homeless, take it away.
Yeah, happy to do that, Rob. Thank you for inviting me to be here with you all today. And it's nice to see all of our coalition partners here on this sunny Friday morning. Very moderate weather today, so we're grateful for that, for sure. Before I talk about the heat, I just want to acknowledge Councilmember Mello and thank him for being here as well and for sharing his information and perspectives on Pride Month. Human Services is very supportive of Pride Month. As you all know, we are very aware that that our homeless youth are disproportionately comprised of LGBTQ individuals, and for the very reasons that Councilmember Mello mentioned. So we are paying particular attention to that. And as well, we know that our senior population, our senior LGBTQ population often faces isolation and uncertainty, different than I think our regular adult population. So our ADR team has been very engaged in Pride and LGBTQ positive efforts, and they've also hosted a summit for LGBTQ seniors for 2 years running now, which is really pretty nifty. So we were happy to be sponsors of the Pride event here in Tacoma these past few weeks. So I just want to start with that and also tell you all that I use the pronouns she and her. So let's talk about hot weather. As you all know, we had some pretty intense hot weather a few weeks ago. When I heard some radio interviews after the fact, they likened it to the equivalent of an earthquake. And I know that there are meteorologists and weather researchers all across the state of Washington who are studying their models saying, how on earth did this happen? We never could have predicted it. It's not supposed to get this hot here. So it was something that none of us ever expected. And unfortunately, it's probably something that we will see again. So we went into that heat event with a few plans. As Department of Emergency Management works closely with my team and with other departments across the county, they quickly mobilized to set up cooling centers and worked with partners throughout the county in other jurisdictions and school districts and businesses to set up cooling centers throughout the county. I will say it's a little more complicated now that we have a lot of our typical congregate setting type facilities not quite as open as they have been in the past. So just a caveat there that they were working through. But nonetheless, I believe that when all was said and done, by Friday, there were 21 cooling centers available across the county. In addition, DEM worked with our Pierce Transit partners to ensure that the buses were free for people who wanted to get to the cooling centers. So that's all good, right? We also had water that was ready to be delivered and was actually delivered to those cooling center sites. So this is where it comes to the part where I'm new, and this is an unprecedented event. And we got to Saturday, I think it was, when it started really getting hot, and we realized, and much of that was brought to our attention by you and people from this group, that there were many people suffering in the encampments who were disinclined to leave their property or leave their encampment for many reasons, many valid reasons. And so we're not willing or not interested in using the cooling centers. I will tell you that generally, the Pierce County Human Services, as you all know, we have a pretty small team, and our homeless team is maybe a dozen people. So it's not that we have an army of folks to organize and mobilize. We rely significantly on the contracts that we put out to direct outreach providers. In this instance, and in past instances in inclement weather, our typical approach has been that we have permissive contracts with our outreach teams. And that is to say, there are allowable costs in those contracts that allow them to use their resources as they see fit in an inclement weather event, which this was. That could include hotel vouchers, that could include buying additional supplies, or transport if needed. What we realized during this event, and what we're going to change now after this event, is instead of having permissive language, we're going to move to much more directive language. If you also are familiar with how we contract for outreach teams, in the past, the county has been much more engaged in direct services in terms of housing and rapid rehousing and shelter. So it's not focused very much on outreach. We had 2 contracts, I believe it was, 2 provider contracts. Recently, we've greatly increased that. I think we're now up to 6 or 7. So with those 6 or 7, our plans at this point are to work with those outreach provider organizations to renegotiate the contract so we have more directive language that talks about, in the event of inclement weather, which could include hot weather, cold weather, snow, smoke, which we know is coming up. Here are the things that we would like you to do. Here's the budget amount in your contract that you are able to access in that activity. And here's the trigger that we will push, or the signal that we will give you when that is activated. So a much more proactive approach than the passive approach, frankly, that we've taken in the past. The other idea that we're talking about, and sorry, I'm kind of jumbling what happened and what we're doing now, but hopefully you're following along. The other idea that we're working on is creating a contract for to put out in a notice of funding availability so that we have someone who has more on the ground presence who can coordinate some of those activities. Because one of the things we also learned in that heat event is that while we have contacts with outreach teams and we can call people all day long, Monday through Friday, when it comes to evenings and weekend emergency events, we need to have a better handle on our contracted providers and communicate with them regularly. So for what it's worth, what I will tell you about that weekend is that we had the cooling centers, we had the buses. When it was brought to our attention that water was needed, we worked with our Department of Emergency Management. We worked with our counterparts at the City of Tacoma, made that available. I believe there was adequate water at the end of that weekend and into the following week to be distributed by your volunteers. So we are happy that that process worked the way that it should have. I appreciate the criticism that it was not as well of an oiled machine as it could have been, and we are working to address that for sure. And then I guess the last thing that I would share before I'm available for questions is that this is not a new thing, or this is not a one-stop thing or one single event kind of thing. So we need to work on what we're going to do in the future. While I know that it is important to have an emergency response for our unhoused, what I think we need to make sure that we do is two things. One is think about what is an adequate response. How much water is enough water? How much outreach do we do into to the encampments where they exist, rather than providing services where we're asking people to come to those services? And then the other thing that I would add is that, again, Maureen mentioned this earlier today, if all goes as planned and we really do have and implement a robust effort to end street homelessness, maybe this won't be such a dire issue in the future. And that's really my ultimate hope, is that we get to a point where, as you know, our goal has always been that homelessness is rare, brief, and non-recurring. And we really want to make sure that we are doing our level best to make sure that happens. And Councilmember Mello and his colleagues on the council are standing firmly behind us and waiting anxiously, I know, for our reports so that they can fund us adequately to go out and make those a reality. So that's where I'll leave it at this point. I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Heather. So please, again, use the raise hand function so that I can see who has an interest in asking Heather a question while we have this conversation. And I see Mike Boister with your hand up first.
Thank you. Let me see if I can get that down before I forget. Lower hand. There we go. I got it. Heather, nice seeing
Mike,
you.
good to see you.
I am a huge proponent of inclement weather, and you hit on every topic that I've been pushing. Okay. The problem, to a degree, is that you were talking about a coordinated group or whatever. I think you need to take a look at what's called the Disaster Assistance Council under the EOC.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
We've been putting that together, and we didn't hear anything. But then again, if the EOC has to activate on the inclement weather for the DOC to become active, and we have all the people except for the Homeless Coalition on our team, and that would be the place to go. And I listened to Maureen all that week. I was out of town, but that's a group that's already together, okay, that we might be looking at. The other question or that wasn't a question, that was a statement, sorry. The 21 cooling centers, that was an intriguing number for me. Do you have where those were located?
Okay, second question first. I don't at the tip of my fingers, but the DEM did have a website where they were all listed. So I don't know if it's still up, but I can certainly find that list and share it with you and with Rob to distribute.
And the DEM was not activated, right?
It was not a full activation, but they were absolutely coordinating that service. So to your first question about the Disaster Assistance Council, is that what it's the acronym?
Yep.
DAC. About that this week, and a couple of staff members who are very active in that. And you're reminding me of that. It's important to talk about the role of the DAC. My understanding it is pretty a broad spectrum of individuals who can be quickly contacted and are familiar enough with emergency response that they know how to kind of react and provide resources when something like this happens. I'm still learning about emergency management. My understanding is that there's activation, like things like a pandemic, and then there's something a little bit less than activation where they're doing stuff, but maybe it's not like the full EOC, full press. There are often instances, particularly for our unhoused population, where we may need to do something before it really becomes a community-wide or all-citizen kind of emergency, right? Heat, they're much more, our homeless population is probably more sensitive to heat issues, more sensitive to smoke issues. So we are working actively with our Department of Emergency Management partners on a couple of things. One is a standard operating guidelines, an SOG. There's lots of acronyms in emergency management that I'm getting a handle on. And that will really clearly delineate when DEM steps in and does something and when we as Pierce County Human Services step in. And I think you're very right to point out that in that continuum, the Disaster Assistance Council has a very important role. And we just need to do more with that. And that's on us that we did not use that resource to the extent that we could have in this past instance.
Yeah, just for your information, Kirsten Hoffman and myself share that council.
Yep, I met with Kirsten earlier this week. She was the one that was sort of schooling John and me about how this could go differently.
Yep. Okay, perfect. I'll stop.
No, appreciate the feedback for sure.
All right, Teresa, your hand there.
Hi, Heather. Thank you for coming again. And it's the people who are closest to us in county and city government who get the brunt of all of our complaints. So I always appreciate you coming and being willing to hear us out and to talk with us about what's going on. I do think that it's great that we now are aware of what didn't work in the past, both with the cooling stations and with the water system. And I know that's going to help us to do a better job as a community next time around. I'm hoping that there's somebody taking a very serious look about why it's so hard for people to pack up their tents and everything and come to a cooling station. And what could we do that is quite different than that? So if you are brainstorming on that and you have some ideas, I'd love to hear them. And I know that I'm guessing most people in this group would be very much wanting to support such a thing. And it's really time to be thinking about what to do about warming and cooling, in addition to how we can get people into spaces where they have some security and toilets and so forth.
Yeah, I appreciate your comments and your question, Teresa, because I think in a way we could almost use some of these experiments as an impetus to get people to this, right? And that's partly what I'm reading into in your comments.
You're fading in and out.
Oh, sorry, hold on. Sometimes it helps to unmute and mute again. I don't know why, but anyway, hopefully that's better.
That is.
So we have been brainstorming what it would take to help encourage people to leave their encampments to go for services in a cooling center or in to get out of the smoke, for example. It might be that we are more proactive about storage. It might be that we have more outreach teams on site to help them actually do the transport. It might be that we think more about what we could do to secure their site while they leave it and then come back. That's a little bit of a stretch, frankly, from county government perspective. It also might be that we bring resources more to them, and such as the water distribution, or maybe bringing a bus on site that has air conditioning on it, and the bus parks right there under 705 and people can go in and use that. I know that our Department of Emergency Management considered that intervention during this last heat event, and Pierce Transit is just understaffed. They did not have the resource to be able to put out extra buses, which is a sign of the economic situation we're in right now just across the country. So we're looking at ways to do that. It's challenging because ultimately you want people to be safe, and you don't want people to think that they can't leave their home to be safe. And so I don't know how much we want to encourage being in an unsafe place, right? That's the challenge here. I actually was getting pretty nervous of the reports that I was hearing from the coalition over the weekend during that heat event. And I went to Safeway, bought a couple of cases of water, and 3 actually, and drove down to the 705 encampment just so I could have my own eyes on it to see what was going on. There were, I would say, 20 people left in the encampment, and I know that that's a fraction of who lives there right now. I was just on the left-hand side. But anyway, I walked around, distributed some water. Everybody that I talked to and saw had water. So there was nobody sort of without water. There were lots of bottles of water. There were a couple of coolers there. Folks didn't seem too concerned. I talked to them about cooling centers. They were aware, they had heard about that with other people. So it's hard to know what more we could have or should have done in that instance, at least in that little tiny sample that I was involved in. But I was somewhat reassured after that visit, seeing that they did have, for those who chose to stay, they did have sort of some minimal supports or resources available to them.
Thank you, Heather. Maureen, you have a question?
Heather, thanks for coming. And I want people to know that Heather I've got feedback from somebody, that Heather was completely available to me over that weekend, which was huge for me. Even when I was yelling at her that it was not my job. And thank you for what you've already described as the changes that are being made. A couple of things. So one is the triggers that you talked about, what will activate Pierce County Human Services response. And it's important, I think, for us that we've got one set of triggers across the county. So Tacoma's already put some on the table. And in terms of 85 degrees, they'll open the stability site for distribution of water. It's not clear to me whether that water can go countywide or not. I'm leaving it to you and Linda Stewart to sort that out. And then the issue of the contracted outreach folks, and how much notice are they going to need to be able to reschedule themselves so that they can go out on the weekends? Because people were done at 5 o'clock on Friday, and don't read emails over the weekend, and they shouldn't have to. I mean, these are jobs, but I mean, one of the reasons I think that you found water with people at 705 is that Food Not Bombs went, and other volunteers went, and Food Not Bombs went out like 3 times a day sometimes. And I took one call late on Monday from a volunteer who said, I had to work today. Where can I go now? Which brings up another thing that I think is really important. And it's, what kind of a communication structure are you going to have? And how do people get into it who are not a contracted outreach team? Yeah, so I think, we're talking to people who work internationally, talking along what you had proposed earlier about how do we take to the encampments what people require. And right now the forecast is 85 degrees on Thursday. So what's our plan? What's your plan?
Okay, there's a lot in there. I think I've got 4 different questions I'm going to try to answer. In regard to triggers, and I know you sent me an email about this earlier, I was not aware that Tacoma had already set a trigger at 85 degrees to distribute water. They do have a pretty large supply of water available at the stability site, which is great. That, to my knowledge, is unlikely to be used or eligible for use outside of the city of Tacoma limits at this time. My preference is that we as the county work with our outreach teams to make sure that there are resources available. What I would say about triggers, first of all, there are people across the country who would look at us crazy if we said that 85 was hot weather, right? So there's just that. But I will that 85 under the 704.
Your mic is cutting out again for some reason.
I would agree with you that 85 degrees when you're sitting in a parking ride encampment is a lot, but 85 in Orting is not. So I think it's, pretty pleasant. So I think we have some work to do to figure out what the right triggers are for the county and how that works with a county that has even different climates within the small jurisdiction that we operate in. So that's one thing. I don't have an answer for you yet. That is on our list to figure out. Outreach teams. So you're right in one sense that right now as they exist, we cannot really expect folks who have 8 to 5 jobs to be available over the weekends. What I'm suggesting to you, either in those contracts or in this overarching emergency response contract, is that's exactly what we ask for and we require, is that somebody be available and be on call or be able to mobilize over evenings and weekends as needed. We've not had that requirement or paid for that service before, and so it'll be interesting to see how we negotiate that and get that, but that's what we need to do. It's my team of 12 is probably not the right people to do that. The other thing that I would say about the volunteers is first, and this is very deep from deep in my heart, is thank you. We cannot do anything in our community without volunteers. Even if we ran the best emergency response in the world, you need volunteers to help support that. That said, we do not want to rely solely on volunteers. And I know that was your point throughout the weekend, Maureen. And so we are going to work hard to make sure that we at the county are prepared to offer emergency response services that are adequate to meet the needs. Now, that's not to say that we're going to agree on adequacy, right? So there is always going to be an organization, whether it's the coalition, Food Not Bombs, any number of people who are going to say what you're doing is not enough, and I'm going to take my own resources and my own time and go out and do that. That's where it's going to get tricky, because you can't say that because a volunteer decided on their own or as a group to go out and provide services that the government or the jurisdiction was not doing enough, right? It sort of becomes this matter of opinion. So I think that's where we're going to have to work really hard as partners to make sure that we understand respective roles and sort of agree to disagree and do what we're going to do anyway, right? So that's my point about volunteers. I agree with you that they should not be our primary resource, but my hunch is that there will always be a role, whether we decide it or whether the volunteers decide it. And then the last thing you asked about, at least in my notes here, is communications. Mike was right to point out that the best avenue we have for that right now is this Disaster Assistance Council. I think I'm getting that right, the DAC. A broad group of representatives from across the community, nonprofits, private sector, businesses, government, and that's the group that really needs to be mobilized during an event like this. And people will self-select in and out of that. And Mike made the great point that I don't think the coalition is represented there. So that's where we have some work to do.
Well done. All right, so Heather, we have a couple more questions, so if you can hang with us.
Yep.
Monique?
Hi, Monique, you're on mute.
I know. That's why I had my hand up. Like, let me find this darn mute button.
I know.
It's moving around, right, Heather?
Yeah, yep. Hey, how you doing? Good to see you.
Good. Thank you. Good seeing you as well. So listen, I don't really have a question, but an exclamation point. on taking it to the people. We must have every plan looking at it from that perspective. As I'm out there on the street, I know that a lot of people can't get to places. And so we've got to focus on how we get things to the people. This thought of being in the homelessness world and a 9-to-5 is crazy to me. So tap into the small nonprofit organizations that say we'll do it whenever. If you need me right now, I'm gone, right? So how do you leverage us, the small nonprofit, to help with that kind of work? And I agree that it's got to be coordinated with the coalition and the county, but also, you know, bringing us smaller organizations in and making sure, I mean, with me on the coalition, I get the information, but there are other small organizations that need it too. So, I mean, if we all know of other organizations that are not tapping into this coalition, then we should be tapping them as well. The outreach teams are limited, and so volunteers are going to be the most important aspect of any emergency. It's just the story of life in this world that we live in. There's not enough people to do the work, and so volunteers are important. So I just wanted to put an exclamation point on that. We need to take it to the people.
Appreciate those comments, and you're right that there are a lot of small organizations doing some heavy lifting. Thank you.
Cool, thank you.
And our last,
I threw the army in there. Sorry about that. I threw a hula in for you.
Love it. All right, Janet, you had a question as well. You're muted right now, Janet.
I have probably more post-traumatic stress than I have a question. Being on the front line that weekend and being a public health nurse and knowing that 24 people were dead because of this heat wave, one of whom was Jason Nixon, 47 years old, living homeless and dies because of the heat wave. In 2017, we had an Amtrak derailment. Only 3 people died. Only 3 people died, but it got everybody's attention. Everybody was front and center. Everybody was there. You could hardly get through the health department because everybody is focused on this one accident in 2017, Amtrak derailment. We have a weekend where we know that there's going to be hot weather. We knew as the public, just by reading our apps, that hot weather was coming. I was told officially by the county that this was not enough to trigger a response by the county. I try to get through the health department. The health department is not triggered to act that this is an emergency. Yet 24 deaths later, we find out it was an emergency, okay? So that being said, right now I am pleased to announce that part of what we did that weekend was to set up a casual, informal relationship with the county at the Puyallup Salvation Army. Right now, for all of you folks who are outreach workers, I want you to know that this coalition has set up, there is now a pallet of water that's been delivered to the Puyallup Salvation Army for people who can't access the Tacoma Stability Site. You can go to the Puyallup Salvation Army and get water. A pallet was delivered by EFN. All of this is volunteer work. So if you need water for your folks, anybody can go to the Puyallup Salvation Army and have free access to that water. Okay, so that's an announcement. And I'm going to keep up this casual announcement. I know Maureen has told me to hold back, don't keep going on supplying water or doing systems. When I was faculty at PLU nursing, we went throughout the county. My student nurses went throughout the county. And do you know that most people will admit that they are not prepared for an emergency? Most people who live in our county admit freely they are not prepared for an emergency. And when asked, where will you go in an emergency? They say the local church. The local church is where people expect to go. And I've told churches this, and churches are aghast. My God, I can't handle that. So we as a coalition, as part of Safe Sites for All, have talked casually. We have drafted a letter, and I know Maureen says, wait, because the people who are paid to do this will do it. I'm saying no. Do we know that there's not another emergency that's going to happen at 5 o'clock tonight? It always happens at 5 o'clock on a Friday night. So there are drafts being made right now to go to churches, Associated Ministries. We've got Tacoma Ministerial Alliance here, the LDS Church. All these churches, many churches have a sense of knowing that their role is to help neighbors in need. Our position is, churches, help your congregates first, help your neighbors in need next, but please reserve some for those who live homeless so that outreach teams can come to your building at 7 a.m. on a Saturday morning or whatever for basic needs such as water. Now, I would like to go through and push on this agenda, and I would like to be part of an official system. I would like this to be part of a DEM or whoever steps up in a government agency to say that we know that government does not have enough money to show up for every single emergency for everybody. We get it. But instead of saying, well, maybe volunteers here or there, why not recognize volunteers who already have in their mission statement the commitment to be there in need? So can we have the blessing sooner rather than later? Maureen, I'm sorry, I don't want to wait until the August after action. I want to know that we can go ahead and pursue this, because I don't know what kind of weather we're going to have next weekend. And I do not want to go through what we went through 3 weekends ago and then have even more stress on people I know. People were calling me. People are calling me personally saying, what can I do? Well, okay. Do you have any water? You couldn't go to Costco and buy more than 2 cases of water. Fred Myers ran out of water. Are we going to let this happen again? I'll shut up.
Thank you for your passion, Jan.
First of all, I just have to say thank you, Jan, for your comments and for all that you did that weekend. I know that at one point I heard that you and your husband were driving a truck with a forklift on it. And so I applaud you for your efforts and appreciate that. And you have some great comments there that we need to take to heart. Yeah, thank you.
All right, so thank you for this conversation. Thank you for being here, Heather, to hear the feedback and take our questions. We really appreciate it. And as usual, we're running a little bit over on our agenda, but I do want to carve out, we have time on the agenda to have small group discussions about how the coalition can help not run the system, but be helpful in filling in gaps when we have situations like the heat emergency, like the upcoming smoke emergency, and like the winter weather that we know is going to be coming. So I'm going to shorten our networking session where we talk about this down to 10 minutes, but I think it's important that we spend some time debriefing a little bit from what we heard here and sharing some thoughts. And then I'd encourage people to take some notes and drop them in the chat so that we can gather that information after these conversations take place. So I am going to set up breakout rooms with roughly 5 people in each room so that we can hold this conversation for about 10 minutes. And everybody will be just randomly assigned. And we will start those now. I'll see everybody back here at 10:15. Welcome back, everybody. I know that the 10 minutes was surely not enough to share everybody's thoughts around this topic, but if people did take notes during your breakouts, please drop them in the chat. And we will move on with the rest of our meeting. Once again, thank you, Heather, for joining us and taking all our questions and being a part of today's meeting. So the next item on our agenda are our typical government updates. So let's get started with any updates from the city of Tacoma.
Hey, Rob. Yes, we have some updates. Let me pull them up for you. Hello, everyone. I did get an update on the 11th and MLK encampment. It was on private property, and they said the owner implemented a no trespass order to have it cleared, and that services were offered to everyone prior to their departure. And I think there was some questions about a portable toilet, and I asked about it, but nobody knew about a portable toilet on site, so we're not sure about that comment. The city also received funding from Pierce County to operate a temporary emergency shelter at Shiloh Baptist. The shelter serves up to 35 single men. There are still vacancies at Bethlehem if anybody knows anyone who needs shelter. Vallejo, this is cool. Vallejo, our young adult shelter operator at Beacon, alerted us of a couple residing in a tent on Fawcett who was very interested in shelter. And Kedrick, our outreach staff, he was able to get them placed at the stability site. So that was cool. The hygiene stations we're currently operating 2 temporary hygiene stations at 8th and Yakima on private property, and then I-705 and A Street on WS.owned property. These temporary stations provide restrooms, hand washing stations, trash removal, and 24/7 on-site security. Both of them have been extended through the end of August, so they'll both be in operations until the end of next month. If you guys have any questions or concerns about any of those locations, you could reach out to, I could put this in the chat as well, 253-250-1766. And more information on the hygiene is available on our website. I'll put the link in the chat. City funded temporary and emergency shelter updates like census numbers are available at our website. I'm putting that in the link. Rental assistance, that is still available as well. Sorry, I'm trying to multitask everybody, give you guys all this information as I'm saying it. There you go, it's in the chat. And then lastly, Spark, phase 3 is beginning. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Spark, but they are an amazing national initiative, really driven to embedding racial equity into our homeless responses across the country. On August 7th, phase 3 begins of this study, and the city of Tacoma is participating. The intent of this phase of the study is to redesign equity practices and policies within communities. So this really gets to the root of anti-racism work, right? We're gonna look at our policies and procedures because that's how we get sustained transformation long-term. So we are looking for an inclusive team of 5 to 10 members that represent diversity across roles, race, ethnicity, gender identity, and lived expertise. So if anybody is interested in participating with us, please reach out to me or Tegan Tidball directly.
Thank you, Clarissa. And I see Richard with your hand up.
Yes, I'm just wondering, is the city made any progress coordinating with the property owner at 11th and MLK to get it cleaned up? And again, I apologize if it's been cleaned up in the last 24 hours. And if not coordination, code enforcement to get some citations going on to take care of the garbage and debris that's left behind.
Not that I know of. I don't typically work on the encampment side of things. And the only update I received is that that the owner had no trespass cleared, and it doesn't look like we went to provide any like cleanup services. It just looks like we went to offer services to the people that was residing there.
Right. My understanding is the trespass agreement has been in place for some time. The encampment was moved out a little over a week ago. And last I see, I mean, there's a mountain of garbage there. And if they're not going to clean it up, it seems like at least code enforcement at minimum should play a role in getting some citations for those folks.
Yeah, I could bring that up. I could reach out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Clarissa. Colin, you had a question as well.
Yeah, thanks for the information, Clarissa. I was just curious on the Shiloh Baptist and even actually on Bethlehem. I know that it's changed. Is there, as far as program requirements, and I know you said they're taking men, but for Shiloh, I'm wondering what the requirements are and who they're not taking. You know, that would be, I think, beneficial. I don't know if that information has been shared with the coalition, but it's just from, and what that referral process looks like, because I know I'm not clear on it.
Yeah, I'm sure that we could pull scope and share it with the coalition. I can let you know, Colin, that that's on our radar and part of the 5-year homeless strategy. I'm going to be reaching out to you guys, to the whole coalition soon. We'll be sending you like a survey link, hopefully to get some of your feedback on like our mission, vision, values, our logic model. Full transparency, I will probably reach out to Garrett Nyland and maybe Maureen Howard and do an individual meeting and share more of the measures and how we're gonna actually measure success to this plan. But one of the key equity measures is that is to oh, I feel like I'm sharing a little bit of but it's to create on-demand, low-barrier shelter for everybody who's ready when they're ready, right? Which is gonna require us to take a look systemically at our contracting and what policies and procedures are of the different sites that we have. So that is something that's totally on our radar. I agree. We are looking at updating our data collection measures as well, and how we analyze our data, and what sorts of requirements we are going to be asking of folks. But this will help us see who's right it'll help us see who's not making it into shelter, what their experience looks like, why they're not getting in, and then we can target what sort of equitable alternatives we need to have in place, right, in order to right size the system and ensure that everybody has a place, like a yes to yes on demand, right? So like when they want treatment, it's ready on demand, and they want shelter, it's ready on demand, because that changes, right? They may be ready one day and not the next. So we want to be able to provide that when it is. So that's our goal. We'll be sharing with the coalition how we're planning on measuring that, and we'll there's a bunch of other things, really exciting things in the plan as well that we would love your feedback on before we, because we're still molding it. Your guys' feedback is still moldable right now. I feel like I went off a little bit because I got excited thinking of the homeless strategy, Colin. But yes, I could definitely talk to Tegan and see if we could get scopes to you guys, if you guys would like to see. I think it's transparency and aligned with where we want to go, so we could at least evaluate where we are now.
That's great. Thank you. So I appreciate all that information. So I guess right now, and people on the meeting probably know, but I'm just, even just like right now, if there's a referral for Shiloh, are those going through coordinated entry, or is it?
I don't believe so. I don't believe so. I don't believe so.
So
I see Valerie shaking her head no.
Is it just calling Shiloh, or what? And is there a number?
That's Tegan's portfolio. I could reach out to her and get that information to you guys though.
That would be great.
I'm a member of Shiloh Baptist Church. It's young, and we've been talking about that for a while with our church members and trustees and so forth. But it's mainly coordinated through the city. And they have been working with Pastor Christopher and the subcommittee to talk about all these issues. But it's for people that, like I say, are trying to, just a transition, not those that are on drugs or that are, major medical or mental problems. They'll be transferred to some other place. But these are really for, they call it men in transition. And that's all I can share with you at this point, but they're still negotiating, talking about setting up the facilities so that it will be adequate with the resources and so forth needed to help these individuals, and also coordinate through other agencies, counseling and perhaps jobs and so forth, and what we could do there at the church, and just informing us of what's happening on a daily basis and what we should be looking out for. But these are really men in transition, not on drugs or not major mental problems, because we don't have the resources to handle that. We do have transportation and so forth, if people are to, if they need to go to the hospital or they need to, have other type of services that they can't themselves because of transportation. So again, we're working with the city and we have not really finalized it. They're still in discussion. And then measurements if it's successful or not. And we have some real excellent men that are mentors, and we have women that are support and so forth, to get out there. Mostly all the time, the women are getting clothes, they're getting food, they're kind of counseling the men if they have mental problems at church and so forth, or problems with family and so forth. So I think we are pretty much, in the ballpark in terms of being able to provide some type of service that will be helpful to these individuals that are in need of really housing or getting back out there in terms of jobs or resources. So that's where we're at with that.
Thank you for that update. And yeah, I think that that's awesome. And I just think that my point is just so that we don't, because I think kind of what was said from the city standpoint, I was under the impression that it is basically just referrals for people that maybe are on Yakima Avenue and maybe are kind of more of our chronically homeless individuals. And that's why I wanted the clarification, just so that we're getting the right people referred. And then so it's not actually open right now. And then I'll be quiet.
What isn't open right now, Colin?
Shiloh. So it sounds like it's not actually open right now, or is it open? It sounds like they're still figuring that out. I'm just confused.
We're not open right now. And there may be some individuals that are on the street, but are looking for resources and have not located them yet, that the city may be referring them to us also.
Yeah, and I know that we move people directly from, like the story that we move people directly from outside into shelter as well. So I think that's part of the referral process. I don't believe that's the whole thing.
All right, thank you for all that information. And yeah, whenever we can get the kind of more solid process figured out, it would be great to hear that from Tegan. So thank you, everybody. Let's move on to our Pierce County update. So do we have anybody from the county that has updates for us this week?
Hello, so it's Valerie. Couple things. Quick, we wanted to announce that the Youth Homelessness Demonstration Project, which is not due till next week, was fully submitted today. So that will bring, when we get this grant, and when is the key word, it'll bring anywhere from $3 to $5 million for youth and young adult homelessness throughout the county. And so this is our 4th year applying, and we are just, it's going to be a good year. So what will happen from here is in August, they will make the announcement. In September, we start writing a coordinated community plan. So be on the lookout from someone from the county to be contacting a lot of you, I'm sure, to help participate in that. And so big shout out, public shout out to the YAB, which is the Youth Action Board. It's a group of lived experts, all 24 and under, who helped write a huge portion of this grant, and their stories are just awe-inspiring. So they met every single week from 6 to 9 p.m. To do their portion. So just a public shout out on that. For rental assist, for COC, because Clarissa, you didn't say anything, but this week, the Continuum of Care nominated and voted in new chair, Clarissa, and new vice chairs, Rodney Robinson and Delmar. So we are just, Continuum of Care is going to be something amazing, right? So congrats to Clarissa, Rodney, and Delmar for that, and all the amazing work that I'm sure that will continue with the Continuum of Care. That application has not opened from HUD yet, so as soon as it does, we'll all hit the ground running to make sure that's submitted this year. And then with rental assistance, and then I have one more announcement after this, we had our ERAP dollars, which is the Washington State Department of Commerce. Those are 100% spent out. And then for our Department of Treasury dollars, we are at 43.59% spent out. Our goal is to be at 41 right now, so we are ahead of target. And then for our TRAP, which is the Washington State Department of Commerce Treasury dollars. We are at 46.76% spent out, and our goal is to be at 41 for that as well. So we are well on target to hit the 65% requirement. Lots and lots of houses have been served. Lots of landlords are being made whole and with the utilities and with rent. So we are just continuing that process, getting the dollars out the door as fast as we can. I did send out a link to the full coalition so that you have access to our live data. So that is updated every single week. And it has the ages, it has demographics, it has where we're serving people, and we track that every single week so we can make sure we're hitting all of the required spots and that we're not missing out on anything. So that data is updated every single week for you and for me. And then my last update is I am, as of today, no longer on the homeless team. So I have taken a new job at the county where I am 100% rental assistance. So today is my last day with homeless. So Jeff Rogers will be taking over and figuring out who will be doing the point in time count and the continuum of care and the youth homelessness and all of the, sorry, Greg, all of the other things that I had. So it has been an honor. I will still be here for the rental assistance, and Jeff Rogers will be here for the future for home. Sorry, Colin, for the homeless. So sorry.
Well, congratulations to you, Valerie. Teresa, you have your hand up.
Just to say that, of course, you're going to be great at that because you're already great at that.
Thank you.
But it would be, we will miss you doing this homelessness piece of this. So I want to make sure that you come back and do a feature spot with us about the things that you've learned, the things that you want to encourage us to do.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I would be honored.
Thank you. Sidonia, you have your hand up.
Yes, I had a question about mortgage payments. We're getting a lot of concern about people not being, their families not being able to pay their mortgage. Are there any programs available that we can refer them to?
Yeah, so there is one for City of Tacoma residents only, and that is currently the only standing program. Washington State Department of Commerce will be leading the work for the rest of the county. Their own accord, nothing we have control over. And so they have not stood up their project yet. So as of right now, there is one project for City of Tacoma, and I'll get that to you. But for anything outside the City of Tacoma, there is not.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So I will still be here every week giving you a rental assistance update, and then Mr. Rogers will be here every week with homeless updates. So thank you all for having me. And if you have any other questions, please let me know.
Thank you, Valerie. So next on our government updates, do we have anybody from the Tacoma Pierce County Health Department with updates for us this week?
Rob, that was put into the chat earlier on because she had to leave the meeting.
Okay, thank you. I missed that somehow. All right, so let's shift. We are seriously behind on our agenda because we've had such a good meeting so far. So I'm going to shift over to Mike Boister and Maureen to give us an update on the meetings that have taken place since last Friday regarding the Pierce County effort to create the homelessness work group, the shelter work group meeting, and then also the steering committee for the comprehensive plan. So I'll let you guys arm wrestle on who wants to speak first.
No, I'll go first because I can make mine short.
Okay.
No, we had a very good meeting this week, and Councilperson Ryan, I believe, he kind of took all my thunder. Because part of the beginning of the meeting that we had was the Eco Northwest. They introduced themselves to the team, and they took, I don't know if Garrett's on this call or not, but Garrett had put together some questions because he's kind of the program manager now. And so he put some questions together that was very good. And so we sent those to this Eco Northwest. They're going to be putting together really the survey because we've been seeing an awful lot of people putting surveys together. Okay. And so they're going to be helping us with that. They're a consulting group. I think that's through the county that's got them in there. So that was real brief on that. The shelters, which was brought up as far as the different shelters that we have out there, and the word congregate was, it's kind of an interesting word, and the consulting group says, well, let's don't change that word until we get through understanding our community of the people that are homeless and so on and so forth. So most of the things that were identified, I think Maureen sent me a couple things. We looked at it, and the youth side of it was not a part of that. So I got that in there as well. Let's see, the survey. An interesting number, and I don't know how accurate this is, but her name is Amin, and she gave a number of 3,200 people, an estimate of 3,200 unsheltered people. That almost kind of blew me away. Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, so, and I asked, she worked along with Garrett on creating that estimate, right. Using a couple of methodologies, and it's actually sheltered and unsheltered. So it's the actual total number of estimated people who are homeless. It includes, I think Garrett said during the call, roughly 1,000 people who are in shelter of some kind. But they don't, what doesn't exist yet is a good accounting of how many people are live literally unhoused at the moment. I mean, not anybody can do the math and come up with a 2,200 number, but it's just an estimate. So there's work to be done there.
Okay, good, thanks.
Yeah.
So that was that. Also, we've got some timelines that we're working on. Let's see, the survey launch will be this next week. By the close of business on Monday, all of our changes are going to be into Garrett, so he can get them into the consulting group. And then we're going to start next week with the survey, and it'll be run for 2 weeks. We'll get some data out of that. August 9th is a community outreach. We're going to start working on that. I missed the date when that was going to be launched. Okay. And then the team is going to be doing a few tours, one of the rescue mission, that'll be on August 12th. And also the site at 6th and Orchard, the tiny home site, and that will be on Thursday of this week, or next week. So that's a real quick one. I also placed in the chat, I'm going to hit that right now if it's still there. Couple of the sites. Yep, I put the sites in there for our meeting and the recorded minutes of the meeting. That's in the chat right now. Okay.
Yep. Perfect. And Maureen, do you have information to add regarding the steering committee efforts that met last Friday?
That's right. So just a few things for folks to keep in mind, because you can check the recording, you can see the notes, but a few things to keep in mind. One, this is not an expansion of Pierce County Human Services homelessness funding or response system. This is a county-wide plan to end homelessness. All funding sources, every jurisdiction, all programs, exactly what would this look like countywide. So keep that in mind. The other couple of things are, one is that there is an outline of this plan just by topics, and I've added in investing in organizations and investing in the people, the staff who are going to carry this out, as well as prevention, that we just don't look at this as assuming we're going to start when people are homeless. No, we're going to end it at the front end. So think in terms of like 3 buckets: shelter, permanent housing of all types, and services that go up and down with people's needs. And then I think I'm really impressed with the Echo Northwest consultants and also with the facilitator for both groups. Bree Williams coming from, I think it's TAC, I think, the Technical Assistance Collaborative. So the last thing I'm sorry?
You're right. You're right.
The last thing is, and I learned this from a earlier webinar, don't think in terms of having to recreate systems to provide services we need. What we want to do is make the systems that exist that align with the needs that people have work for the people who are experiencing or at risk for homelessness. So we don't want a homeless behavioral health system. We want a behavioral health system that aligns with and meets the needs of people at risk for or experiencing homelessness. So thank you.
Thank you, Maureen. So we've got a couple minutes here, Maureen. Did you have critical advocacy updates that you'd like to share with the group?
Yeah, and just tell me to stop talking. So probably the most important thing is on the coalition itself. So we are in a period of transition. Kevin Glackencoley has completed his work with us, and we will invite him on a Friday morning so we can thank him and, you know, that sort of thing. And he does have another position. He's just not at liberty yet to publicly declare it. And the other is that Garrett is in transition to his position with the county, and we don't know yet what that means for his ability with the coalition. We just don't know yet. So in the meantime, we're moving forward. If you want to be part of shaping what this coalition is going to be, sign up for the steering committee, all right? There's a special listserv on the coalition's website for the steering committee. Under that steering committee, Rosemary Powers is leading a governance committee, and we are working through the coalition's absolute commitments. Folks, we just got $50,000 from the Washington State Department of Health for the grant Garrett had put in. We're going to be able to continue the Tacoma Fire Department medical van, and we're going to have money for incentives around getting people to want to be vaccinated. And also we're going to have some staffing money. So if you want to be part of shaping this, plus we've got a small grant around the Speakers Bureau, and we might have more. We're waiting on Pierce County contract and Lamont Green with the Lived Experience Coalition. So if you want to be part of these, get on the steering committee listserv, show up for meetings. Good advocates show up. Number one rule, show up. All right. So now's your opportunity. Everything else can that I have on my 4 pages can wait for another time.
I sense an email coming from Maureen, or maybe a series of emails. So thank you, Maureen. Real quickly, Colin, I'm going to shift our agenda just a little bit and have the update from Ed Jacobs ahead of the Safe Sites for All update. Perfect. So Ed, you have the floor.
Oh, thank you. I'm a chaplain at Nativity House, and I'm also a chaplain at Tacoma Fire Department, which gave me an insight into something that is happening that maybe all of you knew about, but I didn't. And that was when someone leaves a shelter, the caseworker cannot call an outreach caseworker from another organization and say, John Doe just left the shelter. You need to contact them and to stay in touch. What happens is no one tracks, no one has contact or has the ability to have contact when someone has left the shelter and is out on the street, which brings us to an issue that came up, and that was when one of the people on the street died, and tracing the name back to the shelters, one of the shelters said, oh yes, she was here 4 weeks ago. And all of a sudden I realized there's no way to track folks that are out on the street. And even when they die, the shelter would never have known that they had died. So one of the things that I'm putting together, and I'm trying to get get the information from a different source, and that is from Pierce County Health Department. I've been approved, I've been told, to receive the death notices. And within those death notices, there will be a designation for those that are indigent and or homeless. And my plan is that once the list is identified each month, then we will hold a memorial service for these people at People's Park. Because many times no one knows they're gone. So a name came up, Jason Nixon, who died during the heat wave. And from my understanding, and I'm getting this secondhand, so I don't know for sure, but died from the effects of the heat, was a homeless person, and he will be included in our first group that we have a memorial service for. It will be open to the public and certainly open to this group, and we'll keep you updated on when those memorial services are. And that's about the update I have. So I left plenty of time for Colin.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Ed, for this work. And Colin, I see you had your hand up, actually.
Yeah, thank you, Ed. That's really touching, and it's great that you're doing that. And I think it's truly invisible. Some of these individuals end up, and it's really unfortunate. I am curious, though. I know the name that came up, Jason. So I know that he was identified. One of the ways he was identified was he didn't have an address, or he was, he was homeless or whatever it says. But I'm curious because I'm thinking that there's probably a lot of individuals that may have an address on file, but still may be experiencing homelessness, either through loss of the house since that information was updated or not. So I'm wondering if there's I'm just wondering what the vetting process or the research process is behind that. And obviously I wouldn't expect anyone to get too onerously into it, but I'm just curious on that.
Well, the plan is to receive the list of folks from the county, and then to meet with the medical examiner's office and compare notes that way. Beyond that, if somebody else has an idea, shoot me an email and let me know. I guess I will err on the side of inclusion.
Thank you, Ed.
Yep.
Monique, you have a question?
Yeah, Ed, I was going to say that I often find out about the homeless veterans who pass away through the Homeless Remembrance Project. I go to their Facebook page and look at their stuff. The Women in Black run that page on Facebook. So that might be a way for you to speak with somebody to get some ideas on how they do it, because that's how I figure out which veterans have not, I just compare that with the with HMIS in King County. So maybe someone there can help you.
Could you send me a link?
Timothy actually dropped a link into chat. Yeah. So great minds think alike. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Monique.
All right. So we are down to our last 10 minutes of the meeting, but I wanted to give Colin some time, and then we have one item that we need to do a vote on before we wrap up today. So Colin.
And I'll be quick. As far as Safe Sites for All, I've been out of town for over a week. I'm back, but I've missed the Safe Sites for All meeting. I was there this week, but I missed the previous week. So I can update you on the safe parking network piece of that. South Hill Baptist site still full. I was out there this morning meeting with an individual that just got his FUP voucher, so he's super excited. He thinks he's found a place in Puyallup, which is extremely hard, a 1-bedroom in Puyallup. So really excited for him to move out. He's been there for a while. So that's South Hill site's doing really well. Rise is continuing to get up and going. Everything, all their billing, everything is rolling. So they're serving individuals at the site in Hilltop. We are still having challenges with TUUC, just in the sense of, one, we haven't been able to get any referrals to that area. I've been trying to be somewhat picky. I'm trying to put 2 people there at once, and it's just been challenging because people kind of have the choice, and if there's openings, they haven't wanted to go to that site yet. With that being said, we have had a lot going on at that site. The actual toilet has been filled twice just from the community, the neighborhood using it. So it's all, without any vehicles there. And they've been having, and that's pretty much due to a massive amount of homeless activity that they have on the site. Police were called yesterday, outreach services were called yesterday, positive interactions was called yesterday. And really at the end of the day, there wasn't a lot that was done. Neighbors are frustrated and mad. TUUC, I think, rep staff, and there's some on board, I think, are also frustrated just because it's just been a challenging process. So we're continuing to try to figure things out there, and hopefully we'll get some referrals there. Please refer anybody along that you have to me. It's my number. The information's all over the place. We're working on getting some cards to get out to the community. Thanks to the group for help with that, the Safe Sites for All group. So that's about all that I have. I don't know if anybody has anything else around the Safe Sites updates, or if not, we can just move along.
Thank you, Colin. And as Jan noted in the chat, the business cards for Safe Sites for All, Safe Parking Network are coming. So thank you to Lori and Teresa for working on that, and I'll get those to the printer today. So let's shift gears over to Rosemary. We wanted to revisit the topic from last week and do a quick poll regarding the reinstatement of a race and equity committee of the coalition. So Rosemary?
Yes, everyone, welcome this morning. And some of you may not have been here last week, but we had a brief discussion about the importance of our focus on action regarding race and equity for our coalition. And we used to have a committee for that. And as we transitioned to Zoom, a lot of things happened to change things. So we want to bring that back and focus our efforts with some real intentionality. So we weren't able to vote last week on this, and I'm assuming we have the capacity to do that today, or Rob might have said we don't. So what we will do is to ask your approval of this, and expecting that you will approve, I have scheduled a meeting, a first meeting for the group to gather. So once we know whether we're approved, I'll share that as the last comment and invite you to participate.
Okay, any questions before we go to the poll? All right, I'm going to launch the poll, and everyone will have the ability to let us know if they approve, disapprove, or abstain. All right, I'll give this just a few more seconds. All right, any last voters? We've had 40 folks submit. All right, so I will end the poll, and here are the results.
Well, thank you all very much. The meeting time, we have a few people who've already agreed to participate if this were to pass. And so we've set a date for the first time for July 29th, that's next Thursday, from 3 to 4 p.m. It will be by Zoom, which hasn't not been set up yet, but if you are interested in being at this meeting, and if you can't make that time still, if you just let me know, rpowers@eou.edu, I'll put that in the chat as well. I'll make sure that you get on our email list so you can participate when it works for you, and we can consider your time when planning future meetings. So the first meeting will be Thursday, July 29th from 3 to 4 p.m. by Zoom.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Rosemary. And now we have a couple of moments just to kind of reflect back on today's meeting. So does anybody have any comments that they would like to share regarding what worked, what didn't work, what could we do better? We always want to improve these meetings, so the floor is open.
Let's see.
Rosemary?
I just want to say that it's quite amazing how you do this, Rob, and you're a hard act to follow. So when we get other folks, we do want other people to help facilitate at times, and it's really wonderful not only how you've managed to keep things going, but how presenters have paid attention to the time as well. So thank you all for that.
And Kelly?
Why, thank you, Rob. Now I'm on my phone. I don't know how to put my hand down while I'm talking. Oh, I do. There we go.
I'll fix it. Oh, good.
Oh, do you like my bright colors? Look awesome on Zoom. I wanted to just say that or as a reminder, really, I believe I sent the email out through the listserv, but there is a number of events coming up in the next few weeks. National Night Out is probably one of, well, the Eastside Family Resource Center is on July 31st. Sheila's still on me, so she can quote me if I'm wrong. But that's going to be a huge event over there on the east side. And then also National Night Out is coming up. That's on Hilltop, Salishan, the Springbrook neighborhood. So please let everybody know about that. And then once again, I'll send all these events out. I believe there's nine or 10 events in the next like 45 days or something like that. So please, let's get that out to all of those we serve, because there will be a lot of resources. And I think every event has a vaccine clinic as well. So just wanted to put that out there, but I'll send that out again.
Perfect. Thank you, Kelly. And we've only got about a minute left, but anybody else with just kind of good of the order announcements before we head off to the rest of our workday? Julian. Julian, did you want to share?
Can you hear me?
We can.
That's too bad. Hi, this is Julian Wheeler. Thanks for having me. I'm chair of the Pierce County Accessible Communities Advisory Committee. Coming up is July 26th, the anniversary of the passage of the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990, signed by President George H.W. Bush. September 13 approaches our next regular session of the Pierce County ACAC meeting. I put the details in chat. It's 9 a.m. on Zoom, and there are deadlines coming up sooner than that, and we are able to take votes as a committee between our regular sessions. August 2nd is a deadline for submittal of an accessibility project for consideration by at the state level. So we would have to consider it here at the county level, then to expedite it, or rather to advance it for consideration at the state level. You know, if you have a project that has some aspect to it or some attribute that can be characterized as making things more accessible, not just for people with disabilities by way of a ramp, but also in terms of other aspects, you know, in terms of getting information out, including people with disabilities, please, you know, we do have intake documents to go over. It's like writing the grant. Please approach me, my email address is in the chat box. And of course, we are always looking for new members and new ideas. So feel free to join us at a meeting, but also if you want to join us as a member, please consider that. And also happy Pierce County Pride Month. All right, thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Julian. And Maureen, your hand's up. You're muted.
It's behavioral training or something. So two things quickly. One, Jan Runbeck and I will meet with a couple of members of the Centers for Disease Control homeless team tomorrow, on Monday. So if anybody has anything you want us to put on that meeting agenda, which is pretty open right now, please just either put it in the chat now or send an email to me, mhoward@pchomeless.org. The second thing is that Heather Moss didn't mention it and I forgot, but the Pierce County Department of Emergency Management after action review of the heat emergency will be August 11th. The coalition was invited to have 1 to 3 people. I asked Monique Brown and Jan Runbeck to join me for that. Both agreed. And so we'll be the 3 who will be recognized in the meeting, but anybody can watch the meeting and I'll send out the link. It's August 11th in the afternoon. I think it's 1:30 to 3 or 1 to 2:30, well, one or the other. So, and hopefully by that time, we have kind of a list for ourselves of what we want to make sure is in this after action review and whatever plans there are going forward. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, Maureen. And we have surpassed the end of our time for today's meeting. So as always, you are welcome to stay with us. We'll have a short break before we launch into a planning discussion for next week's meeting. But if you can't join us for that, I hope everybody has a good weekend and we will see you all next week.